I'll
Do I
blame
need
it
to
on
clap
the.
too?
I'll blame it on the sound here.
We're ready.
There you go, improv clapping.
Do you do improv classes?
Yeah, I do improv. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, a little improv. Well, a decent amount of improv. Then elevated as a sketch.
Ooh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, that's how actually I got the author part of my artist visa.
That
Yeah,
makes sense.
that I was writing. Yeah, I was writing.
Wait, is it recording already?
Yeah, it's recording.
I love it.
So it's live.
It's live.
Yeah, this is the 30-second behind the scenes. You do improv? I do improv too. Oh, I
So
do
much
sketch.
in
You do
common.
sketch?
I don't do sketch actually, only improv and stand up.
Oh, okay.
But I want to try it.
Yeah,
Seems like it's a package deal.
Package deal. There you go. You package it. Next time you have a meeting, you be like, hey, look, I do improv, but also I do sketch. And they're like, oh, okay. So you can write briefings. Okay, that's good. Write briefings on the fly.
I know. Is that how you roll on your artist visa here?
Yeah, I wrote it on the fly. I was like, oh, I need this documentation. Yeah, I can come up with a good sketch about my life and how interesting it could be. Remove all the bombings that I had on my sets,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did the improv visa, the artist visa in Berlin come about for you? How did you end up here?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. So, would you like the short version or the long version? I'll give you the medium. Medium.
Deal.
I remember how to say medium in German. I completely forgot. But I'll give you the medium version. So with the artist visa, I first visited Berlin back in April of last year. So April of last year, I was doing a comedic tour. Me and my friend went to a couple different countries, including Germany, Berlin specifically, the city. And it was good. I had a good time, left, came back in that same tour. And then some friends convinced me to move out here. Some comedian friends. It was like, hey, you need to move out here because I was doing pretty good out here. And I was like, how do I move? I just got here. What are you talking about? And it was like, yeah, you can do something called the artist visa. So they told me about the artist visa and how to get it. And, they said it's pretty easy, in quotes, pretty easy. And I was like, okay, let me think about it. And then I asked another comedian and she gave me all the details. She was like, okay, if you want to, you go on this site to get your basically the appointment. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
You're good.
I got a little German. Yeah,
My B1 German these days.
Hey, you corrected me, so I believe you. You corrected me with confidence.
It's definitely termin. I do know that.
All right. So I did that. She told me exactly what time to go in order to schedule the meeting, and I did it, and it was like right there. So it was like almost a
being on time is like 90% of success for Germans, I feel like.
Had
you been late to that appointment, it would have been denied.
It would have been a mess.
You understood the rules. Good job.
Yeah, I definitely understood it. So I was waking up and I was like, okay, I need to get here on this time, and it was available. So I was able to get the appointment, and then just had thoughts about moving here, and I sold everything in New York, put everything into a carry-on suitcase, a book bag, and then came out here. I was able to get the Anmeldung fairly early.
Yeah.
So anyone who doesn't know, Anmeldung is the address registration. You register your name to the address.
Makes you a resident, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I was able to get that within a couple weeks of me being here, which is
it's huge for everyone who's not in Berlin. It's usually a month.
Oh, big. Yeah. It's like, it's the biggest thing. It's so big. Even when I was printing out the documentation, people were like, how? They were asking me at random print shops, like, well, how'd you do this? Like, how long you been here?
Yeah.
It was like, what is going on? And how I got it was because I was staying at an Airbnb at a time trying to figure things out. And the lady who was renting it out, I was just, we're just talking. She's from California, from America. So we just kind of having that little familiarity of like talking. And she was like, hey, so what brings you here? I was like, oh, I'm here because of stand-up comedy and doing this. I'm an artist, but I'm trying to do this thing, get an artist visa. I got to do this Anmeldung. At the time, I was saying it wrong. So I was like, Anmeldung, like just putting it all together. And she was like, oh, okay. Is that something you need? And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. And she's like, oh, if you need that, then we can get that for you. I was like, oh, thank you.
What a jam.
Right. I was like, but how I'm going to do it given that, I talked to the landlord. And she was like, oh, no, my husband's the landlord. So he can do it for you. And like within a couple of days, he wrote it out.
Connections, people. Life is about connection.
So big. So then she did that, and then the rest was history. So then I was able to do that, go through the artist visa appointment, which was weird. Yeah, it was weird because the guy was an ex-marine type of like strong, big German dude, and he was like really
Yeah.
testing me. Uh, and that was an interesting interview.
Yeah.
Let me just say.
No, I mean, all joking aside, I think, as an immigrant myself in different countries and just seeing a lot of immigrants, I think understanding the system and being able to navigate the system and not getting super frustrated when things go wrong is like 80% of being successful as an immigrant, because I see most people who are struggling is you don't know the language, you don't know the process. It's like what's natural to native people, right? If you're born here, if you grew up here, like as I'm sure for you in New York, like you know the system and you navigate that, and then you're in a completely different one. And that's why I think immigrants end up being very successful in like business and all parts of life because it exercises that muscle that then you translate to all parts of life.
That's a good, yeah. I never really thought about that way.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
like the way you look at the things because especially in Germany, like most people are super frustrated and like you joke about it, and I think it's a better way of moving through life.
yeah, because it was definitely an experience. The amount of paperwork you have to print out just to prove who you are in this country is
Oh my
crazy.
God. I only did it, so I did it in 2010. I was here for a year studying abroad, which was funny because I grew up in Hungary and then I moved to New York to study abroad there, I guess. But then in America, they call it study abroad. So I was like coming back to Europe, to Germany.
Mhm.
And the two options, there were three options for housing, either be with a host family or be in an American student housing or figure it out on your own. And I didn't want to be with Americans because I wanted to learn German, but I also didn't
Wow.
want to live with a family. So I found this apartment on Craigslist and I heard about the Anmeldung. So like before school started, I took that week to like get all the paperwork done. And then school was starting, and for all the American students, like the school did it because they knew they wouldn't figure it out themselves. So it turns out I didn't like have to do all these things on my own. Like the school would have just done it for me, but it was
Wow.
like, so I went through the process, and it was probably less paperwork back then, but
Mm.
I don't know because I didn't do it here last year. I was only here for like 5 months.
Oh, and then you kind of moved around and things, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before we we kind of got into it, but for
Tends to happen.
before we go any further, if you'd like to introduce yourself,
Mm.
you've done a lot of things, but for
A
the
lot
people who
of
don't know,
things. Yeah. My name is Fanny. It's pronounced Fanni in Hungarian, but in America it just became Fanny or Fanny. So I just say Fanny, which is interesting. I grew up in Hungary, born and raised in Budapest, and I moved to New York to Sarah Lawrence College when I was 18. And then I lived in Brooklyn for 4 years, Colorado for 2, back in New York for 4. And I've been a digital nomad in the last year, which my grandma was very concerned when she heard that, I don't have a home. So I was like, it's like a homeless person, but with money. So don't worry, grandma. It's a very privileged American thing to digital nomad. So I tried it. And I have my own company now. I do a lot of things. I'm trying to streamline it to teaching meditation, mindfulness, and improv workshops for mostly tech companies, but any companies, offices, retreats. I really love bringing people together, in-person events. And my background is in recruiting. So I spent 10 years starting in advertising in New York and then tech, both in-house and then running my own agency.
wow.
That's it. I'm moving to San Francisco. Like
Yeah,
6 weeks.
we'll talk
7?
about
I
that
don't
because you,
know.
yeah, you moved you've done a lot of moves.
I
I
like
mean,
moving.
yeah, both literally and figuratively. Like
Mm,
you move to many places from what I've seen or read, and
yeah.
then also you've done, you have a lot of hats, as they say. You wear a lot of
Yeah.
hats.
Very multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess let's start with Hungary. It's an interesting place. I have
Tell me about your experience. You were there more recently than I was, but I'm going in June to my grandmother's. So.
okay, yeah. So Hungary is well. Let me go Budapest because
Yes.
let me not be a typical American and generalize like as if most people don't. But I'm gonna be a good
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I want to be a good world traveler here and say that Budapest, Hungary, was an interesting place. It was a fun place in which it
Mm.
was very relaxing, very walkable. Old city, it
True.
feels,
Mm-hmm.
because there's still some things that were like it felt old.
Yeah.
Which obviously Budapest has a lot of history. I went to the castle where you walk up the tall steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did
Cool.
that. Yeah, and I went to the sauna. I went to the Schnezi,
Say Cheney.
yeah,
Yeah,
Seceni,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, sauna. So that was cool.
I could tell from your video, and your wallet was stolen and no, lost,
Yeah, it was
and
lost.
nothing was stolen. You got it back, and you were surprised.
I was so surprised. I was like,
I was surprised too. A lot of my people there did not have that same experience. But I
okay,
guess it's like,
yeah. There's some people in the comments got made a video about it, and they were
yeah.
kind of like, what part of this? Or
It's like, how much did the Hungarian government pay you for this
Yeah.
video?
I was like, oh, so it's not that safe. Okay, I thought it was. But yeah, I went
Oh.
there. I got my wallet back. I was walking around. I have a friend who lives out there. Who's
Nice.
we knew each other from New York, and he moved out there. He's been there for a couple of years. So we got some drinks. Went to the room bars.
American or Hungarian?
American. He's actually no. He's actually from Spain.
Oh.
So he has Spanish, and then he lived in New York for a bit, and then during the pandemic, he moved to Budapest, Hungary.
Okay.
Yeah, so he has a place there. He showed me all the places to eat and to get stuff.
What did you think of Hungarian food?
Actually, so when I was first there, I had I think Israeli food. So I had that because there's a big Jewish population there or so.
The biggest survived in Europe, that part, I think.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that.
There's a
So
specific history.
there's a lot of like Jewish restaurants.
Yeah.
Let me say.
Yeah, I
And
missed that.
I had some food there. It's pretty good. The burgers are very good.
Also, Israeli and Jewish are not the same. Is it Israeli or Jewish?
Ooh, I
It's
got
an
myself-
important distinction.
Damn. Okay, got myself in trouble. Israeli.
I think there's more Jewish, actually.
More Jewish?
I've seen. Yeah, yeah. Because
Well-
it's like Hungarian Jews, yeah.
Hungarian Jews. And
Yeah, because
obviously-
Israel is like a country, and like Jewish is, it's a religion, it's an ethnicity, it's like my family. It's interesting. I had this conversation. My grandfather is Jewish. And so I asked, like, I mean, he survived the war in Budapest, not a fun experience. So I was like, didn't you think about, your parents? Because he was 8 when the war ended, but maybe it was 8 when it started. I don't know. The point is, I asked if his parents wanted to immigrate to, Israel or the US or somewhere. A lot of Hungarian Jews and other Europeans immigrated at that point. And he was like, no, like his parents never thought about it. He never thought about it. Like they really, identify as Hungarians, like German Jews were German. And, it was Holocaust, obviously, majorly changed a lot of things, but it is a distinction. And I think Budapest has a lot of really good Jewish food. So
Yeah, definitely good food. And thank you very much for sharing that. That's to improve my knowledge about the world.
Yeah.
I definitely get flamed or I get made fun of for that.
I think it gets intentionally confused and merged together, especially now in this political climate. So that's why I don't think a lot of people know it. I mean, a lot of people don't know a lot of things, and I think it's sometimes like people are afraid to like ask questions or like learn more about things, and I think the whole point is to like learn new things.
Yeah,
in life.
Especially in this day and age, it's definitely difficult to ask certain questions because you may be, labeled as X, Y, and Z just for you being curious or just asking questions.
Yeah, like a lot of questions, like, is that politically correct to ask? And I mean, obviously, there are certain things like you don't ask, but I think that gray area, I know we were talking about this a little earlier, like, it's like you're walking on eggshells, tiptoeing around, and people are, afraid of asking questions.
Yeah. It's a tough time. I mean, with certain conversation, and especially like how with this podcast talking to other
Yeah.
people has really helped out, just because when it comes to the context of like getting certain information, I think sometimes matters. So like us having a I'm talking about Budapest. I was like, Israeli, and then you was like, no, actually, but it was like not the whole focus of the conversation. It was just
Yeah,
more
yeah,
of
yeah.
like just informing me, and it was just like, oh yeah, thank you very much, because part of a story we're talking
Yeah,
about is not like focused just on
yeah,
that aspect.
yeah,
Which I think maybe more conversations like that are needed, just to
yeah,
have a generalized conversation about experiences, right? So,
yeah.
went to Budapest, had Israeli food. Uh, went to the sauna. How you pronounce it again?
Széchenyi?
Széchenyi. Okay, I went to Széchenyi. Saying that, hey, it's a very safe place, and people were like, well, it's in a safe part of town, maybe, or there's a lot. That's a very nice spot. So good, lucky you. But also when I was there, I was walking around a lot. I went to the park.
Mm,
I even went to this one park where you like kind of climb up these stairs and got like a big grass patch and you could overlook the city.
mm,
And I like laid in the grass. I took a
mm.
nap, in
Yeah,
the grass, which as a person who grew up in a city, that is, you never.
yeah, it's peaceful up there. I think that's where like the Statue of Liberty is on the hill, probably.
I think so. So they have like a square where it has like all these like metal pillars and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can kind of get lost in it or so,
Yeah.
right? And then they have like two sides where it's like a platform. I guess it's like there's a museum underneath it, and it's like a museum of radiology or some
Oh,
scientific. I don't know. It's like
I don't think
very,
I've been there.
but like each side you can climb up these stairs, and then you can overlook the city or so, and it has like these grass patches at every level or so. Like say like they have like 4 or 5 levels outside, and you can just walk and like overlook the city. It was something crazy where it's just like wow.
That's
So
cool.
very walkable city,
Yeah,
Budapest. But
yeah. I love that. I love long walks. I think that's what I love most about Budapest, Berlin, New York. San Francisco, I've visited only, but it has big hills, and that's a good exercise to walk up and down there.
no, very yeah, you're gonna
Walking.
have a fun time when you go out there. But how was it growing up in Budapest or
I
Hungary?
mean, it was beautiful. I really liked it. I think also as when you're a child, that's your only experience, and you're only a child in one place. So I can't compare it to anything else. But I mean, I grew up in a very privileged family where um, my mom was at home with us. My dad had a job he really enjoyed and I learned a lot from. And we traveled. We had a family house with a yard. I went to good schools. I had a lot of fun with my friends. I did fencing competitively. Like it was yeah, my parents are really like family oriented people too. They there's a lot of like intergenerational trauma on both sides, obviously with um, my dad on that side, but also on the other side. And so for them, it was, creating this beautiful, peaceful family was like a purpose and a dream. And now they live in Berlin, so I got to see them here. And that's, it's a sad part because like I moved away when I was 18, and that was for college, and they really supported me studying abroad. And my both of my parents, but especially my mom, like is obsessed with education and reads a ton, and
Yeah.
didn't think Hungarian universities are as good as American ones. My brother went to the UK actually, so I was applying to both, but I ended up choosing New York, and I went to a liberal arts college, which
Okay.
at the time I just knew. So I was working with the Budapest Fulbright Association, and so they always
Nice.
have like now I know like people go on these Fulbright scholarships. So the woman who was there graduated from Vassar. And so she kind of introduced me to, the liberal arts colleges versus state versus like big private and sororities and fraternities. And I was just like, well, I don't really like sports and I don't want to binge drink parties. So I don't think Greek life is for me.
Right.
And yeah, Sarah Lawrence was like a very hippy dippy artsy, interesting place. Again, I think at the time I didn't appreciate it as much because when you're 18 and that's your only experience, like I remember, so I moved away from New York. I got there in 2008 and I moved from 2017 to Colorado.
Ah,
And that was right after the elections. And that's when I kind of realized that
which elections?
the 2016 when Trump got elected.
Oh,
And
okay.
I was shocked, but everyone around me was shocked. And they were all like New Yorker Americans. So I was like, oh, like my US experience is 4 years of like the most liberal college in the country and 4 years of like hipster Brooklyn. And so getting like some more political diversity and like understanding the country a bit more was important to me because I just applied for my American citizenship. And I think that's when, you know, a lot of people like Americans started to talk about moving to Canada or, you know, moving away. Like if Trump gets elected, I move. Most of them are still in
Yeah,
the
it's
country.
very tough process. Yeah, a lot of paperwork in some cases. Yeah.
Isn't it funny when like middle class America is like, I'm going to move, and then it's like, but they don't have Costco, so I guess I'll just stay.
I mean, yeah, that's a jarring thing, actually. No Costco, you got to go to the supermarket every day.
Not gonna do it.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, if I can't buy my 1,000-liter bag of pretzels, so I can't do this. I got to stay here.
It's funny. I was listening to one of the other podcast episodes with the dopamine guy, and he was saying like everything was so big when he got there, and that was my experience. I remember just, you know, furnishing my college dorm room. We went to Bed Bath and Beyond for the first time, and just like the shampoos and the body wash, like I just remember I was 18 and I was standing in the aisle and I was like it's like 2 liters of shampoo. Do I need to buy for the whole year already? Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny how the sizes of our goods are. You know, it's like even milk. Sometimes it's just like a huge, 10-gallon of milk, and it's like, what kind of family do you have that's going to consume this amount of milk?
And then the sizes of the people follow, but I don't know if
No, it does,
that's
yeah.
politically correct to say. But we
No,
got to Las Vegas, and my fiance is from Syria. He was in Dubai and Germany before, and we were just like, there are a lot of people are very fat here.
there you
I was
go.
like, you don't say that.
If there's a Costco, you're gonna definitely see some people that reflect the sizes of what they sell in Costco.
But I mean, that's just the truth, right? I think that's what, like in the US, we, you know, there's like a startup and the technical solutions for like everything, and we want to like overanalyze and intellectualize so many things. But like, I mean, the health crisis is like the biggest health. It's like people's diet and lack of movement is not good for us. I mean, it's very simple at the end of the day, but there's a lot of money in consumption.
A lot. I mean, did you notice that when you moved first from Hungary to
Yeah.
New York City? Like,
Yeah, just like the level of consumption. And I mean, I grew up, my dad was running an advertising agency, the biggest one in Hungary. So I, you know, was on very visibly the capitalism was new in Budapest. My parents graduated from university in 1990. They actually went to Moscow to university. That was the only study abroad option in the Eastern Bloc there at the time. It's like my mom jokes when people ask her, like, why did you go to Moscow? And she's like, well, I applied to Oxford, to Cambridge, to Harvard. I didn't get in. It's like, no, you could go to East Germany or Moscow or other Eastern Bloc countries. So they went to Moscow, and I was actually born the last year of their university. So I was born like 2 months after the wall fell. My parents went to the first Hungarian elections, like with me in the baby Bjorn. So
wow.
I do feel like a democracy baby, because that was, you know, it's just the huge transition for the country, right? Like after the Second World War, it was immediately the communist regime, and that was a forced thing. It wasn't like, free elections and people like voted for that party. So, and they kind of saw that whole cycle of democracy through. And now with Orban, it's not quite at the Putin regime, but it's very like it's that direction and those principles, and it's not a free democracy. All the state, all the media is controlled by the state. In every business, it's tight. It's like similar to Russia or China. So my parents moved to Berlin because of that. And so it's really interesting because I think we've gotten a lot closer because we all share the immigrant experience now. I'm in the US. I have a like 2.5 years younger brother who lives in London. And then a 12 years younger little one who just graduated from Sarah Lawrence as well,
Yeah,
ironically.
congrats to your brother.
And he's moving back to Berlin, and then my parents live in Berlin. So we all have these like different immigrant experiences because my parents, came here in their 50s, not speaking either English or German as well. Like they speak and get by, but not like, it's different when you had your entire career. My dad was at the height of his career in Hungary, and like they gave up a lot to, have a very different life in Berlin because of those democratic principles are very important to them. And then I moved away when I was 18. So did my brother in London. And the little one went to high school in Berlin. So he's like a really third culture, like half childhood in Budapest, half childhood in Berlin, and then New York, and then Berlin. So it's fun.
Wow. Yeah. That's so much to unpack there in terms of like, your parents and what they had to go through and like the changes that were happening, in Eastern Europe, I guess, and then going to Russia and then democracy and then the disintegration of it or something. I don't know if you consider that disintegration.
I would.
But then moving to Berlin at that age and then having to learn German because I'm assuming they spoke English and then Hungarian.
Yeah, my dad studied German in university. My mom studied French, so he spoke better. My mom was taking classes, and then she's been taking classes here. So now they're both at like C1, C2.
Wow.
Yeah, they speak. I know I only speak English and broken German, and they speak like fluent Russian, German, English, French. My mom is now learning Italian.
Oh, so your mom is one of those people where languages.
She loves learning and languages, and like talking to people, which I want to get there. I just feel like it took me so long, like in English even, to like now I feel more comfortable in English than in Hungarian, just like talking like this or about my work or all of that. But it took like, I think, the whole college experience. And that's why I'm glad I went to a smaller school that was we had like round tables, small classes. So like everything was a seminar except for very few lectures. But it was very like speaking and debate and then writing. We didn't have tests. We have like essays and conference papers and research projects. So like I just feel like I got to a point with English, and then doing stand up and improv, like I just feel like it would be 10 years of speaking only German to get to that level. And now I would rather, like, I want to get better at stand up and improv and writing and like go deeper than get to a level in a new language when I can like, have surface level conversations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, trying to be funny in a different language, that is a whole different thing in itself.
Are you gonna do stand up in German?
I want to learn German.
Yeah.
That is something I do want to learn just because I live here. And look, I have this thing where I'm like, I can speak German enough to tell you what I want, but I don't want you to talk back to me. So I can tell you what I want. That's it. Maybe some light conversation back and forth. But other than that, it's like, yeah, just give me that one coffee. Just kind of shine coffee bitter, habe becoming, whatever, depending on the day. And that's it. Don't ask me, hey, would you like anything with that? If we're here to go, you want water? Is it, how do you want it hot, warm?
You're meeting the friendliest Berlin people.
I
I feel
actually,
like the stereotype is that they don't ask you anything.
I've been getting too many friendly conversations
You're
now.
a friendly person,
I guess so, but it's now causing anxiety because then I only have so many German words to provide to connect with you.
That's a great way to learn.
I guess, but it then causes, like, for example, the other day, right? I went to I went to some supermarket or something. And I went to go order just some bread, regular bread, brought, right?
That's the main food in Berlin
Main
for
food.
anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah, for bread, brought is the main. That's a staple of
That's
Germany. This is
like
what Germans are known for.
beer and bread and wurst, maybe.
Yeah, versus like a close third. Yeah. So I go in this supermarket and I order some bread. I was like, kann ich ein zwei Brot bitte? And it's like, I think you said which one. I was like, diese, pointed, diese Dinkel Brot or something, right? He's like, okay. And then I looked at some schnitzel that was like on the side, and it was kind of old. But I was like, is these good? I was like, it's good. And boy, this person on the other end was like went into a full explanation. She's like, yeah, I mean,
And the pig's name was
yeah, the pig's name, everything. Like, yeah, I mean, it's
He
kind of
lived a
dry,
happy
it's kind of
life.
out there. Like, I knew what he was saying because like just based on the thing, but he's kind of like really like animated with how not so good this schnitzel was, and I was just kind of like, yeah.
So did you eat the schnitzel?
I didn't because I mean I was just like he was going so in to the point that sometimes somebody talking to you and they kind of talking to you, but they're looking for some type of response or some type of like feedback.
Mhm.
So they're talking like that. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I mean, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah. And I was like. And I was just kind of waiting for him to just like, just say the magic words for here or the Zumidnem. Just like,
Where to meet them?
yeah. And I'm like, I'm just waiting for those words, but I'm just hearing more German words with so much animation and energy
You're
about some
funny.
old schnitzel. And I'm just like, all right, I get it. I should not order it. That's why I feel I shouldn't order it. So let's.
Yeah,
And even
it's
when,
so funny. It's like that's another cultural difference. It just never happens. In America, we joked about in a restaurant. Like in the US, it's always like, oh, like, are you sure it's gonna be enough? Just like, order more. It's like three meals per person, at least. And here we were ordering for the group, and then the waitress was like, he has my friend's American boyfriend, and she was like, well, like. Is that gonna be too much? Like, are you sure you want that appetizer? Like, the main is very big. And then he was kind of just like, trust me, like, I'm going to eat all of this. But we were just like, it never happens in the US that they try to convince you to not order something.
yeah, they're kind of like, hey, look, here you go. You let me know how it goes.
Yeah.
Or you ever ask them like, hey, so what do you recommend? They always try to recommend you what's the easiest sometimes. Like it's never like a personal, hey, this is what I enjoy. They may offer that, but if it's easy for them to serve it to you, they're not gonna say, hey, get the filet mignon that has like crumbled prawns on top of it. And
unless it's the most expensive item on the menu.
True. Okay, there you go. Either the most expensive or the easiest. Or they size you or they look at you. If you came with some baggy pants and like, maybe like you look disheveled and you're like, oh, can I get a filet mignon? They're gonna be like, yeah. Or you can get fries. Or you get this fry, But yeah, so that German is a very difficult language. But I'm curious about your time in New York City because that's New York City can it can give a lot of experiences to people. Let's just say. And you at the time you moved to New York City, what was the neighborhood that you lived in?
So when I moved when I was 18, it was in Westchester. So I took the train in it's like 45 minutes to Grand Central.
Okay, very important because Westchester is not New York City.
Yeah. And I think that was really good because I was thinking about NYU and Columbia and Barnard, but I did like the idea of like having that campus experience. And I mean, New York City is also just so expensive. I think living like in the city as a student, I think I was a bit like worried about how that would go. And even at Sarah Lawrence, like again, just I think even what's considered like middle class, like the levels of like wealth and consumption was very different in America than it was in Budapest growing up. So yeah, I think like the pricing and cost, the size, the pace, I just really like how fast moving, how diverse. I was 14 when I visited Manhattan with my family. That was my only time in the US before I moved to college.
Wow. Okay.
And I just remember, maybe I was 13. But yeah, just I love walking. And so in the US, it's harder to find cities that are very walkable. So like I would go from like the financial district, like up to like Columbia walking.
Whoa. Whoa. What?
Yeah.
That's a long, that's like an hour, 2 hours. That's like
2-3 probably.
Wait. So from
but you can, right?
You can, but most people don't do it.
Yeah.
So from the bottom of Manhattan, all the way to basically close to like the middle to top part of Manhattan.
Yeah, I have done that. Not like every time, but I have done it a few times. But in general, like I don't think I would take a subway if it's like less than 30 blocks. And if I can walk, I do like that, like 50-ish block walks. And so I just love how all the neighborhoods are different. Like, you know, Hungary is a very like non-diverse country. Like the Hungarian gypsy population is the biggest minority, but sadly the country is like very segregated. And so like I went to a, you know, public school in Budapest with like 100% white kids from similar backgrounds to mine. And that's like a very average experience of how the city is. By the way, I think I've never gone to school here, but I think that's one of the problems in Berlin too, that it is a very diverse city, but you know, like the different neighborhoods have more different ethnic makeups. And so there are schools that would be like Arab kids majority, Turkish kids majority, or, you know, white German kids, or like Jewish kids in Jewish schools, which I think is very dangerous for like a country like Germany, a city like Berlin, when you have kids growing up who like don't know each other and don't get exposed to each other's cultures. Like I feel like at this day and age, that's the biggest point of school. So anyways, I liked that New York was diverse, because that was the first diverse environment that like I've been in. And it's also very like a mix of like intellectually curious and artsy city. So I really, you know, just loved everything from museums to the theater to jazz clubs to stand up. Yeah, I mean, I had like a huge love affair with New York City. I think sometimes it was hard to differentiate if I was in love with men I was dating in the city or the city itself.
Sorry.
And yeah, and I spent most of my adulthood there, like 16 years. And out of that 16, I was in Berlin for 1, Colorado for 2. But, you know, I like started my career there and started my own company. I was there during the whole pandemic. I got married in that city. I got divorced in that city. I was in a serious relationship. I broke up. So it's like, it holds a lot of memories. And I think at this point in time, like that was a big part of moving out of there, that, you know, like I have a good memory too. And then you just like, you remember every corner and like every bar and restaurant has a memory. And you know, especially like now I'm moving with my fiance and it's his first time in the US, and I'm really excited to be in a new city for both of us and discover from scratch, as opposed to like sometimes I call New York a graveyard of memories.
That's funny. Graveyard memories.
That's gonna be my next stand-up.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fact right there in terms of, yeah, especially New York.
But I mean, you must feel that because you grew up there.
Yeah.
So tell me more about That.
Yeah, about New York. So yeah, so originally I'm born in New Jersey. So just to clarify, yeah, because when it comes to New York and New Jersey, that's a thing.
It's like Jewish and Israel are very different.
Yeah. If not even more serious, no joke. It's like, what you say? You from New York City? You from Jersey? It's like, relax. I was living in New York City for a while. So the time living in New York City, that was an interesting time because for one, I have family living there, so I always like visited and things. But then living there, with New York City, every borough has its own personality, as you know. Like you have Williams, you have Brooklyn, you have Harlem, you have Queens, you have just Midtown, all these places. So the reason why I moved there was because I went to this coding boot camp. So that was my interest.
Which one?
I went to General Assembly.
Okay. Yeah, it's like Flatiron and GA that people usually get.
Yeah. So I went through General Assembly. It was like on some, quit my job. I was living in Philadelphia at the time.
Okay.
Quit my job. It was crazy. Like I was planning on living out of my car and all this other stuff. But then actually now General Assembly has now implemented that you have to have a place of living, because I think maybe me saying like, because I was having a conversation with a woman. I didn't have to say it, but she was just like, oh yeah, so, what brings you here and why do you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, I really want to see how far I can go with like programming. And I'm really, really want to come out there. I'm actually planning on living out my car. Like I just mentioned it. She's kind of like, okay, let me just talk with some people and then let's confirm. And then there's like an official document that they never sent out, but or didn't have in the description. Like, hey, yeah, you need to have a place to stay in order for you to go to this thing.
It's like that's why every rule has like a history behind it.
Yeah, so sorry everyone. You can't live out of your car because of I mentioned it like a dumbass. Yeah, so New York, my introduction to it was that of like trying to learn how to program. So my first year was just locked in, like on some learning how to program for like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not going out. So I didn't even know what to do in New York City for like the first year, because I was just like locked in, just working on learning how to program. Yeah, which was probably one of the top 3. Well, one of the most difficult things I've done in my life.
What are the others?
The other difficult things. So that's it. Okay, again, deep. So one is dealing with this comes to culture. So a third culture kid. All my family is Liberian, so from West Africa. So I was the firstborn in America out of my whole entire family. So like dealing with that cultural difference, although ironically Liberia shares American culture because America technically had colonization stuff in Liberia, but my family from the interior. So dealing with the cultural differences of growing up in America, but then having a majority of my family in the way I was raised from a West African like level.
That's cool. Yeah, my ex-boyfriend's family was from East. They're alive. Is from Benin.
Okay.
And they immigrated in their 30s, and he was born here. So like very similar. I learned a lot about like the dynamics there. Then it's very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. That was like pretty difficult because it was just like constant, just differences. And what I had to deal with was that people just saw me as different, just on many different levels that I couldn't comprehend.
I mean, it is hard to be a Black man in America is, as you know, it's not an easy experience. And then you have this mixed identity of like, if you're like generationally Black in America, that's a different history than being a recent immigrant, and then culturally too. And then you're like just navigating so many identities by just how you look without people getting to know you as a person.
Yeah, it was difficult. And then also having an accent too. So I had like a strong accent for most of my life. Yeah. I mean, it was to the point where I would tell people like, hey, I was born here, like born in America. And they was like, no, you're not. And like, it was always like a constant thing.
What language did you speak at home?
So it was mostly English. I knew the dialect that my mom spoke. It's Pele. Pele is a P-E-L. K-P-E-L-L-E. And this is from a tribe in West Africa, in Liberia specifically. And I knew how to speak that when I was younger, but then it kind of interfered with me learning English a little bit, or me at the way I spoke. So the way I spoke English was that of like a very strong accent. You may not have known certain words I would say because it was like heavily rooted in a particular accent. Call it either broken English or pidgin English, however you want to call it. So yeah, it's crazy how to call it broken English. But yeah, that was something I spoke with for a long time. So like you would see me as something, but then the minute either you knew my name or when I spoke, it was just like a completely different shift of like, okay, you're African. And then everything that was associated with that at that time was negative due to, you know, what was shown on TV, National Geographic, and what was kind of taught in America, that being like Africa being seen lesser than for a long time. So that was like probably one of the difficult things. So that's, and then I would say that was not probably the first, but let's say in the top three. And then the second was, so I lost my father when I was younger. So like around, was it 13, 14? Wow, so like, you know, that was like pretty difficult, you know, obviously having that. And then the way it happened too. So, you know, the way it happened was not like on some grand crescendo. It was just like he went to, you know, took a nap, didn't wake up due to like a heart attack. And it was like, yeah, it was like very.
How old was he?
Yeah, he was his 40s, I think like mid 40 or something. Yeah, so young. Yeah, fairly young. Yeah, fairly young. Also, yeah, he was fairly young. And then also like the way it happened. So like, you know, literally like it happened so fast where like, you know, I took a nap, he took a nap, I woke up, he didn't.
That shooks you as a child.
Yeah, it definitely did. It shook, and then also it kind of painted a lot of things for me in terms of how life works in a sense.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot more layers to it in terms of like, you know, when it happened, the way I saw it, right? So, you know, like when I woke up, all the commotion that was happening, seeing the paramedics trying to revive him, I'm watching, right? You know, seeing like it's not, so it's like a lot of layers to that.
Yeah.
And kind of influence some of the way I do things in life in terms of like how I view it, the decisions, knowing that life is short. It could just be, you know, literally you can take a nap and then not wake up. So like that is like, that's not like a saying, that's like a reality.
Yeah.
And like now navigating life with a type of tenacity, let's say.
Yeah.
And a experience it, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense because you have a very I mean, we were joking about like the New Yorker mentality before, and I didn't know this part, but you just have how do I say this? Like I know from my experience and seeing a lot of immigrants around, like it's very hard to do all the things in like the first 6 months of being here that you've done.
Ah, really?
I think just like, you know, being like very embedded in the comedy scene and this podcast you're doing and just how, you know, you're like navigating everyday life and speaking German and all of that. Like for some people, I think it takes like 5+ years. I have friends who've lived here for 10 years who don't speak like any German and things like that.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think it's, I think it's very, I admire that a lot. I think it's very important to live life. And it's a hard balance, right? Because you're like, I guess that's the whole point of life, that you know there's an end, but you don't know when that happens. So you're supposed to live every day like it's your last day, but like you should have savings and a retirement fund.
Yeah, savings are important.
So it's a hard balance.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. It's definitely a tough balance. I mean, you know,
how do you balance that?
Right. I mean, I read a lot about some of your travels too. Like I read somewhere that you traveled, I don't know how many places within a decade, like 10 places within.
Me, I don't count, but it's definitely more.
Yeah, you traveled a lot. And I guess where did that come from in terms of like you having, the courage to travel that much? I'm not travel, move. So like because travel and moving is different.
That's different. Yeah, move probably 10ish. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
but in New York, even I moved like apartments every year, different neighborhoods.
Wow, I mean, so
in the last 4 years, I have this obsession with moving, and now I really want to challenge myself to settle in San Francisco and obviously getting married and a lot of like stability coming to my life and. It's more uncomfortable to me than I think discomfort is to a lot of people. Like there's something about, like we joke, my mom is similar, and I think her grandfather was a little similar too, that there is some kind of like gypsy blood in our family, because we just like, that would be ideal if I can just have a caravan and then like keep moving. But yeah, I just really, I get like a lot of work done on the move. I get inspired, I write, I meet people, I like I do like having an apartment. I miss having a place. Like I don't like living in and out of like Airbnbs and friends' places and hotels. In this past year was good, and I'm glad I did it. But I do want to have a base. But no, I'll probably keep moving in the next, maybe stay there for a couple of years. But my fiance is luckily the same. He grew up in Syria and then lived in Dubai and Berlin and China and now the US. So
Wow.
I think it's important, because in the past that was, I think, one of the more friction points. Like I was with partners who like really wanted to, settle in and live in one place and very stability. And um yeah, I do like moving.
Wow. And that's an interesting point you bring up about like culture and how that influences certain relations you have with people, more specifically with how you interact with the world, whether you stay in one place, whether you travel a lot. And I think, to you and your fiance, you guys have traveled in so many different
Mm,
places that it kind of meshed together because,
yeah,
the culture is that of moving or
yeah.
traveling for the most part. But you brought up something that I think maybe people from different cultures can reference, or I mean, I know I do to some extent,
Mm.
is that you said that you have a certain blood within you that maybe it could be the reason why you like to move around a lot. You, your mom share the same blood.
Mm.
Do are there any things, or are there anything that you like maybe contribute to that you have in your personal life? Like you travel a lot, but then also other things. I don't know.
Um, Wait, can you rephrase the question? I'm
Yeah,
not sure I understand.
I probably said it very complicated,
Like,
but
I am yes,
yeah, you say you
yes.
have you maybe have some Hungarian gypsy blood in you,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Is that by the way? Can I say that?
Yeah,
All
I
right,
mean, I think, yeah, yeah.
'Cause I thought
And
gypsy was a bad word or something.
I mean, I think that's part of, so when I talk to friends who identify as gypsy, they said they prefer gypsy over Roma, which
Mm,
sometimes the Roma is the more politically correct term, but it's more because, um, like with, I don't even know what the right term for it is, just like the hate and discrimination and the anti minorities or whatever in Hungary. I think gypsy has been probably in Hungarian used a lot like out of context and more as like a pejorative term by itself, which is the problem, because it's a beautiful culture and a big part of it, like historically, um, the gypsies were moving across, I think from Asia to Europe. And I'm not
mm,
like super well versed in gypsy history, but I do
yeah.
know like there is the caravans, and it's also a very communal culture, so it's like very deeply embedded, that it and I think the like Muslim Arab culture is like similar in a lot of ways. Like we talk about that with Firas a lot. Like the American culture is like very individualistic,
Mm,
and you see that, and I think that's part of capitalism, and part of why there's so much like poverty in the gypsy communities, that um yeah, just like the capitalistic system and society didn't like value their communal way of thinking, and sharing the resources. Like when people move to the big city for jobs, and people don't work around the house anymore and do more local
mm,
work, and then how the wealth gets distributed and who has access to those well-paying jobs, which in Hungary, I mean, you have to put your picture on your resume, and like all the studies show they don't call back gypsy. Like it's horrible.
So messed up.
So, but yeah, but the moving part and so many parts, I really like the culture.
Mm. Yeah, that's that. Now that kind of makes sense. Thank you very much for sharing that. Because yeah, because once
I love the Hungarian minority history.
right. I mean, yeah, because I'm learning a lot, and when it comes to even the word gypsy, I thought that was like I always felt kind of. That's why I didn't even want to repeat it back. I was like, I don't know, that's a bad word to say, but it's good that you kind of break it down. So then it's just more of an awareness of that.
Yeah, the Jews and the gypsies.
Yeah, Jews, gypsies, really. We're talking about it all. Yeah.
I identify with both. So.
There you go. All right, cool. So when you travel, well, not travel, when you move, I feel like, well, tell me if this is true. I feel like when you move a lot, there's certain things that you find of necessity that you need to have in new places that you move to. Are there things that you have that you say you need in every move that you do? Or every place you move to?
Ideally, yoga studio nearby, walkability. I love the water, so I'm excited for the ocean in San Francisco again.
Nice.
Obviously, Berlin and Colorado did not have that. Diversity too. That was hard in Colorado. I think it was like after New York City, it was just more like American, less like foreigners in general, and like it's like a very wide state. So I do tend to do better in diverse environments because I think, like you said too, having an accent, like in Colorado, like every time I went to the supermarket and people were like, oh my God, where are you from? And I was like, I live here. It's like, but where are you from? I was like, New York. But where are you really from? And it's like, I haven't lived in Hungary in like 15 years and I just want to buy a tomato. Sometimes you don't want to talk about Hungary like 5 times a day. It's hard but to integrate, and I think especially in the US, and now it comes from a good place and people are just trying to be curious, but like I struggled a lot with that in the past because like being with American men, like especially dating white American men, like the questions they would ask them is like about your work and hobbies and like more you as a person, and the questions they would ask me was like, oh, how is Hungary, like what's the difference between like Colorado and Budapest, and I was like, this has like nothing to do with me.
So sorry all in advance for asking you.
No, but this is like this, you know what I mean. When you're asking me a lot of personal questions.
I'm like, damn. Yeah, okay, I'm glad I bounced out.
It's not a passive aggressive comment. I would be honest if I didn't like your question.
Oh shit, that's that's funny. Okay, so you have so you do a lot of things. You do yoga, you do wellness, you do improv. You have also a recruiting company as well, but
which I'm transitioning more into the mindfulness workshops focus space because it's like hard to do everything, and I think the recruiting space is changing a lot. I do miss working in person. I was remote when I was in Colorado, remote like during and kind of since the pandemic, and interviews have really like mostly transitioned to like video and phone, and I really want to work more with offices and like people in San Francisco. So I'm gonna be doing a bit more the workshops and mindfulness side. But yeah, I do have a background in recruiting, and I just like jobs, and I'm interested in how people get jobs, how jobs are changing, future of work, that space. So it's to be connected to that.
Okay, so if someone wants to be more mindful, more aware of their self in this world, what are some tips you can give someone?
Get off your phone. Back to the America consumes too much food and it shows on the health. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like what's most surprising, and I'm curious about your improv experience. But for me, like I started to meditate in 2017 when I did my first yoga teacher training. And that seemed like, before I was like, well, you're basically not doing anything, right? Like you close your eyes, you breathe, like it's the most simple thing. And then when I talk to people, by the way, it's hard. Like it was hard for me then, it's hard for most people because we live in a world where, we just spend so much time on screens with people who are not physically present with where we are, that like the mind and the thoughts get very disconnected from the physical body. And I think it over time at the amount that's happening, it's kind of like, what's that movie, Super Size Me, when you eat
Yeah.
McDonald's for like a very long time. Like I think that's a bit like where I can only speak to, again, like the cities I have personally lived in. Berlin is less so, but I haven't worked here, so I only really worked with New York, LA, San Francisco, like, fast paced, mostly in tech, obviously. It's but I think it's a broad thing in like the Western advance, whatever. Like I think it's a symptom of late stage capitalism that it's a lot of, and I come from the advertising world, both growing up and then um, my dad did not want me to work in advertising, but then in college I just got interested in
Family business.
it, and I guess so. And so I've hired all these people who are doing all the data and analytics and strategy and creative. Like a lot of money and creative brain power goes into how you generate this constant loop of, needing and wanting, and then the instant gratification with buying and social media. So I think it's just because people live in a world where, yeah, like the physical body and the head gets very disconnected. I think that's the only thing with mindfulness and why it wasn't a thing before. It's kind of this, new picked up term, like everything is, because I think we're just so far from the simple things of like, I mean, I see, we sit down at restaurants and then people sitting across from each other on their phones.
Yeah.
Sad.
It's crazy. It's something that's, I mean, obviously, how things are created now with phones and technology is meant for you to be more into it, to be more involved. Watch time is a big thing in terms of you get more incentivized if people watch more of your stuff, how much they do.
Our attention is the biggest commodity. It's
Yeah.
like weaponized to no end. And you see that with where our political systems are, where the wars are around the world, where like I just see so many people, in this like kind of angry and hopeless place because you like watch 24/7 what's happening, but you can't do anything about it. And you're disconnected from, it's like kind of the miserable in between a little bit, when we are not connected to where we physically are, we are also not connected to what's on the phone screen. We're in this like limbo space.
That's yeah, I agree with the limbo
Right?
space. Specifically with things that are happening in which you have no control over,
Mm,
which is, it can be very jarring, or not jarring actually. It can be very like incestuous, like, and it can creep up into your life in a way that if it makes you feel like you're losing control
yeah.
over time. It's not like immediate that you like, oh my gosh, I can't control. It's like over time that you kind of feel this anxiety because there's so many things that's obviously triggering you that you feel you want to help, but you may not be able to the level you want to.
Yeah.
So then you become in that space that you talked about.
And that goes, I mean, our fundamental human need is to, be in control and be safe. Like, you know, they do all these tests with people of like when you start to give up, if you and I can't reference like
Yeah.
things exactly, but you know what I'm talking about, of like how people just, yeah, give up caring because yeah, you like lose interest, hope, and then it creates, yeah, I
Mm.
think we're at a very interesting time, right? As AI is taking off. And I mean, especially in San Francisco, that has
Oh.
the most.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun time
The
for you.
most amount of AI startups. That's a big reason I want to be there too, because I think it's a very great opportunity for humanity to really hone in on what's human and let technology do what humans can't do. I think it could be the most prosperous like societies we reach like globally.
Mm.
But we have to rethink fundamentally, for example, jobs, and why I'm so interested in jobs, especially full-time jobs, because in America there's like this obsession with like if I'm not working or if I don't have a full-time job, I'm like not a respected member of society. Like that's your only goal,
Yeah.
to like work and then shop. And that's your like purpose as a citizen, to, work and buy and work and buy. And it's interesting because like in the 50s, when women weren't working, and now like as a woman, and like the whole feminist movement is around like women's careers and breaking the glass ceiling, and being able to work. And that's obviously great, and I personally love working. But um I don't think like every single person, like in the history there were no societies where like everyone had a full-time job outside of the house, and then you hire people to take care of children, to take care of elderly, and
Mm.
that then becomes paid work. But when either men or women stay at home, that's like unpaid work. Like we just have like a very bizarre, I think, societal system that's like not working, and is definitely not going to work in the age of AI, where there are going to be less full-time jobs. I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah. And it's gonna really force us to rethink just certain roles and what we do in society. Disrupt it definitely in a way that it's gonna. I'm curious to see how it's gonna work out, because I think there's certain things down, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but down to a biological level in terms of what we are what we are susceptible to, or, in terms of like how we interact with each other, and how fast are we able to, I guess, deal with the changes. And then also those things. It's kind of like, all right, as you get older, you kind of want to relax more, or you things change, or you don't move around that much. But
Yeah.
maybe in the world of AI, you have to move around a lot or learn new things. And maybe retirement changes because you have to be up to date on things.
And there has to be basic income.
Okay, basic income.
The guaranteed level. I mean, in San Francisco, like the level of homelessness is just incredibly sad and disappointing, to be in like, the richest city and state probably like in the country and the world. And there's just like a huge gap like right in your face. And I think the tech community, rightfully so, gets a lot of shade for making the world a better place and caring about these like huge problems, but they don't give a shit about people sleeping in like tents on their doorsteps. So yeah, I definitely want to get more involved in like that and local communities. And how do you see, by the way, you working in stand-up comedy and podcasting and having a very independent and free life in Berlin versus in New York? Is it different in the two places?
I mean, I guess, okay, that's like twofold. I mean, one is that I'm not working a full-time job. So that in itself is like just different. I'm always used to working a full-time job. So now not doing that and working in something that I really love to do, it's like completely just a different type of like world for me.
Mm.
And then another is move from New York City to here. That is just naturally a big shift, right? From a more maybe the highest capitalistic like place in the world, to then now moving into like, I won't say the least capitalistic, but definitely more combative against that world,
Yeah.
capitalism, right? So with me leaving full-time job and now working full-time doing podcasts and comedy, it has allowed my brain to really just have space to just think about other things and just to take in things differently. It's not
Yeah.
within a small box that is of that's already been constrained by like a 9 to 5 or work and like the stresses that come along with it. So it allows me to just breathe a little bit more. Also, now focusing on these things more, I'm able to be more effective, just like in terms of the way of thinking, the jokes, how I'm connecting with people, how social media is just, I have more space now. I don't have to worry about like, what my job gonna think. Cause that used to be a thing. Social media, you put something crazy up on social media, your job finds out, they might be like, hey, what's this? Now I ain't got no job to worry about it. I could put out whatever I want.
That's so cool.
So that's like freeing.
Freedom. Yeah.
Very, very, yeah, that's that freedom to a level I didn't think was possible. Second, with the New York City move to Berlin, that was different in that Berlin, or just let me say Europe, and from what I experienced in going to other countries, is more slower. Obviously, in comparison to like
much so.
a lot slow. I mean, I have videos
So
on that
slow.
about the anxiety of like, is customer service, what's going on? Or, or hey, why are people walking slow? Or the trains. So all these things. But how can I say? I would say that it has made me learn more about myself in terms of like certain systems that I've been a part of and like what I like and what I don't like.
What do you like and what you don't like?
I realized that in New York City, in terms of the hustle and bustle and the capitalism and everything, I actually like that. Like I just do. Yeah. Because some people are like, oh man, I had all this anxiety living in New York and now I'm glad I escaped that. I'm like, I like that.
I like it.
I didn't realize I like it, but I actually do. I kind of yearn for it, actually.
It shows on your work attitude here, I think.
Yeah. I can't just sit in the park all day and just be like, well, then that's it. I'm like, hey, okay, I'm looking at my watch. All right, it's in 2.5 hours. I think I can spend the rest of my hours working. It just is. And, here in Berlin, when it comes to art, is different in terms of respect of it. Like there's more respect for art than it is in New York City.
Yeah.
In that people, if they like it, they're going to actually compensate you monetarily in what they like. Okay, I like what you did. Where else can I find you? So they're more open about their appreciation of art in general, especially art that you bring that they love. Whereas in New York City, they're kind of reserved in that, or it's very piecemeal in terms of that level of respect or that gratitude or how they see your art. They're not going to give it to you as like free as they do here in Europe or specifically Berlin. And also the competitiveness in New York City is high. So therefore the quality sometimes is a little bit more, in that if you're in a certain room, the rooms that you're in is going to determine your skill level. Whereas in Berlin, it's kind of flat. So you could be anywhere. Somebody can like not sing and then be like in a singing boot camp or open mic and be like, yeah, I can sing too. You be like, what the? You be like, yo, what's going on? Somebody, the last two people can really sing, and then this person, you be like, all right. So you be like, I don't know what's. So then it's kind of almost. You don't even know.
Which is like Berlin's value is equality. And that's in a lot of ways, it's, you have a chance to compete with the best. When, in New York, it's like very thin.
Right. It's almost like a pros and cons with it.
For sure. I like New York.
Yeah. It is jarring. And I have talked to some people that they have been affected by this like flatness of, let's just say, it's not even flatness. It is what it is. When it comes to art, there's going to be some built-in hierarchy. You somebody that can sing good and then somebody that can't. And your body is going to tell you. When you hear, you're going to be like, you're like, my ears are too open for this experience.
That's a debated question in our family because my mom and brother thinks that I sing terribly, but I won a singing competition in first grade.
Oh, really?
Elementary school.
Oh, check you out. Okay, first grade. Been down with it since the first grade.
I don't think it's very good now, but whenever
if you do want to
complain about my singing voice, I'm like, I won the competition.
At least you got some, award to say, hey, I got it. Boom.
Yeah. And yeah, can we just talk about the indoor smoking and how that's horrible in Berlin?
Indoor smoking. Yeah. Indoor smoking is it is, yeah, I didn't realize that was something out here. That was like a shock where I came. I was just like, whoa, it's just smoky as hell in here. What?
Why is that the freedom hill that Berlin wants to die on? Just doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know. One thing I realized about Europe is that each country or city has like their own historical thing they like to hold on to, regardless of what type of issues may come about from it. So I don't know if that's like a
It's like
German.
lung cancer is all right.
I guess because then you go to Munich, it's not that way, or you go to other places in Germany, it's not like it. So you go to Berlin, here Berlin. I mean, everyone got the little roll up thing where they got the tobacco, they got the,
So bad.
you can walk
Hate
down the
tobacco.
street. If you say, "Hey, can I get a light?" You got like 20 people like, "Yeah, I got you." Tobacco, yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. How about you? Like, how was your experience with dealing with the indoor smoke? I mean,
Yeah, I don't like it. I smoked in high school a bit, and when I was in college, I probably like had a few here and there where I didn't go out as much. I know I don't remember it bothering me that much, but like, and I don't smoke. I haven't for a very long time, and um, it's just like I have a very sensitive throat. I cough, I get sick, everything smells bad. So yeah, I have a very hard time with it because like even in clubs, like I really like certain clubs in Berlin and all of them are smoking inside. And I can't spend more than like a couple of hours in them because like I got a headache and like I just like it's like hard to breathe.
yeah. So you club out here in Berlin too?
I only really like three. So I like Berghain, Kit Kat, and Sisyphus.
Ah, okay. So,
And I especially like Berghain because people sometimes ask me if I'm an American because I sound like an American, which shows you how many Americans they let into Berghain.
wow. So not that many. So it's really exclusive. You gotta come in with an accent.
Like, yes, I am American.
It's like, how'd you get in here? Wow. So okay, Berghain, Kit Kat, and Sisyphus.
Have you not been?
I have not been.
Oh my god!
I have not
Okay,
been.
well, we'll take you. It's a fun. It's like a circus themed. So it has like a big outdoor space, which in the nice weather is beautiful, and then it has like I think 2 dance halls. So it's not like super huge, but like with the outdoor space, it's just like very magical. It's like you can buy pizza and the bar and just like chat outside. It's fun.
Huh. Okay. I'm glad I'm hearing some of these things because what I hear about Berghain, Kit Kat, and some of these places, and that is it's a kink club. It can be freaky. And coming from America, coming from a certain demographic, want to hear kink and freaky.
It's not. I don't think it's what you think of. I enjoy both of them. Like Kit Kat, I think is probably more like kinky, but I don't know. I think like the space. Like I really like how, for example, you can't use your. I think in Kit Kat you can't even take your phone in. In most of them, they like tape your camera, so there are no pictures. And just back to people being off their phone, like for me it's sometimes hard in the US like going anywhere because it's all about like people taking videos and photos for social media, and it's almost hard to distinguish of like, are we having in-person experiences as a performance for social media or like are we here to enjoy it? And like in Berlin I really like that you cannot take pictures, and I think that itself is just freeing because like now people are so afraid of like asking certain questions, saying things, behaving, like everything. It's like it's funny again, like coming from the like communist socialist Eastern Bloc where the state paid like the whole apparatus to spy on people and get information. And now in like the free democratic world, we just like volunteer, like our entire life documented. That's like the Stasi's dream in his.
If they only stayed around for a little bit while longer, could have been like, yes.
It's like, wait, people are just gonna like tell us everything, like yeah. So I really like the clubs here, mostly for that reason, because it's really like I feel that people are a lot more present there, and just dancing, and I've only had good experiences, especially in Berkane. I think it's like the most respectful. Like no one, like I usually go alone dancing, and like I've heard especially for women, it's like you get like hit on all the time, and it's like an uncomfortable dancing experience. And here I think people are a lot more respectful, and like what you said, there's a greater appreciation for music and the art. And like here, like people go to certain clubs to see the specific DJ, and it's just a lot more like depth.
Mm.
Whereas in the US, it's like, we let some steam off, drink shots, take selfies, and that's the extent.
Yeah, definitely partying culture in America as opposed to Berlin is different. Yeah, a lot of people are more involved with the music, the vibes, and everything.
Yeah.
I heard from other women as well that they feel safe. No one's hitting on
Yeah.
anyone, and that you can just really just be free
Mm.
to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is again, come from America. It's kind of interesting to see.
Yeah. And I think kinkiness is can be a part of it or a result of it, but that's not like the goal. Like people, you know what I mean? It's almost like the cause and the effect are different. So I'm just
Mm.
saying that because I do. If you haven't explored the clubs, I used to be a lot more skeptical when I first lived here, and now I really enjoy them in the past few years. So I think it is a unique experience. But we'll take you in May or June.
Okay, I mean,
yeah, he's gonna join us.
okay. Do you have to wear anything specific?
Like what you black is.
That's good. I heard you had to wear some kink wear. You got to wear some harnesses and some.
Do Kit Kat maybe, yeah.
Okay, because I'm not. That's a lifestyle I'm not ready for.
Just go to Sisyphus. Come to Sisyphus with us.
All right, I think I could try that.
It's a fun light version.
Yeah,
they let Americans in there too.
Oh, okay. All right, I don't know that. Okay, you got my attention in Latin America. Yeah, I was kind of skeptical until I heard the Latin American part. Then, yeah, it's like, oh, just like America. So. Oh, shit. Okay. Well, one question I've now started to ask some people, but I want to ask you, is that you are a third culture kid and that you lived in multiple places. I mean...
it's an interesting question because I do think about it. Like, how do you define third culture kid? What does that mean to you?
Good question. So third culture kid, the way I define it is anyone who has lived in a culture that is different than the original culture. Oh, yeah. And most people, I mean, obviously kids, so a lot of people attribute it to like your younger years, and also added to that more cultural meaning, like from different nationalities. Yeah. Is how it's usually. For me, I expand that further to where it can be any walks of life. So say, for example, someone who grew up in a conservative background, wherever that is, and now they're more in a liberal background. And
that's huge. It's more of a cultural shock than sometimes like even like New York and Berlin can be, similar, like liberal, and some of the values are more similar than New York and I don't know, middle of Kentucky or somewhere.
Exactly. Like, I mean, even moving from New York City to here, Berlin, culture shock, trying to figure things out. Sure. People reserving their emotions in a way that I didn't think was possible. Somebody could be having a good time and they're just holding on to that good time in their soul. And you're just like, whoa, oh, this is a different type of repression. What's going on? So I define third culture kid as a person from a third culture as someone who is living in a culture that is different than their original culture, generally.
Yeah, I do check that box.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm probably a third culture adult. Like I was a very Hungarian kid raised by Hungarian parents in Budapest. Like my brother, was Hungarian with Hungarian parents living in Berlin. Like to me, and then moving to New York. So like that's definitely the third culture. I think for me, how I like to think about it is like, again, like going back to like the basics and simplicity, like there is time, right? And like where you spend your time physically. and also your attention, obviously, and all of that. But just like time determines your life, your future. Like that's what we have. And so I spent most of my time, like I spent 18 years in Budapest. I spent, 14 in New York City, and then 2 in Colorado, and now 1 traveling. And they've affected me according to the length of that time, pretty much. So I do identify as American Hungarian, Hungarian American. I don't know. I haven't
Yeah,
decided on
it
that.
depends on which one you want to go with first. It's your choice.
Well, chronologically, yeah.
Chronologically.
Hungarian American businesswoman and
Oh,
entrepreneur.
okay. Yeah.
I'm like, my Wikipedia page. What would it look like?
Yeah. All those has
Yeah.
cultures. You've moved around a lot, so that's a culture in itself. You in the wellness, that's a culture in itself. Recruiting, that is a brutal culture. I've met some people that have worked in recruiting, and you've probably seen some people cry. So that's a
Yes.
strong type of culture. So you lived throughout many different cultures.
Yeah, I
in
grew
that.
up with, I think like the Jewish family history, although like I grew up in a non-religious family, and we didn't. I started to keep like some Jewish holidays in high school, more just for fun and the people. But I always had like I can't belong to any organized culture. I think that's too too much strictness for me. But I do find, religions, all of them, just very interesting, like culturally. And my fiance is from a Muslim family. He is non-practicing and non-religious at the moment, but yeah, it's a lot of different cultures around, and I think that's not intentional in a way of like, I have a checkbox. So like I growing up, I would have, it wasn't like part of my culture to like get married to a Muslim man. Like that felt very far away, and now it's, very like exciting and natural. And that's why I think like diversity is important. Just, being around people who come from different places than you. And that's why I really like your podcast too. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, like that's an important thing to just share those stories. Cause like you said, it's, you only know what you grew up in and have heard the most about, and all the media that we consume comes from somewhere and is shaped by that culture. And I don't think it's necessarily intentionally trying to, some are trying to be like intentionally
Yeah.
biased and not objective, but I think a lot of them are genuinely trying their best. But it's still, you're humans who are writers, who are researchers. The stories we tell and we see are important because we only have our own experience. To be surrounded by people who have different experiences, you just learn from that a lot.
Yeah, and we get to learn a lot about different cultures in the process,
Important.
like I get to learn about Hungarian culture, the difference in Israeli, Jewish, the foods associated with that, living life throughout these places. So
West African culture.
West African culture, that is that is a culture in itself.
Do you go back? Have you been?
Yeah, actually, I went back to I went to Liberia. I went back.
What was that like?
Ooh, that actually, the first time I went back, that was one that was very impactful because I was always associated with the Liberian culture. So it was always like a yearning to go back because I was never identified as American outside of my house. So I was always like Liberian or African. So when I went back, it was almost like a coming back to home thing. Like it really felt very good. I was talking to uncles that I've known only over the phone, but like I've seen. Yeah, so it's so beautiful.
See, the physical spending time in the same space can't replace that.
Yeah, it was so impactful because I mean, also with West African or African culture is that like it's so family knit that like I knew already about my uncle, but I never seen him. Like for I think at that point like 20 some more years. But he knew my birthday. He knew this because him and my dad or my mom would always talk. So just seeing them, my family in real life, that was cool. Also, I was able to see the village in which my mom was from. So like
Mm.
everyone in that village is basically a descendant from like my great grandmother who founded the village. So it was cool to go to a place where it's like, oh, everyone in this village, we're all related. And like to see life the way they lived since the founding of that village. And then also seeing how my mom lived, because you tell stories like, oh, you complain about walking to school. I had to walk this many miles to go to school. And then actually going that many miles and be like, oh, I understand. Wow, I cannot complain again. Because you went far. And this is like great. This is the best conditions right now. You did it at a time where there was no roads and there's probably more animals that could get you. So it was like an overall like impactful experience because it was like melding cultures that I was like kind of disconnected from a physical level, and then now finally physically connecting with it.
So important. Because I
So
see a
important.
lot of people in America who are born there and have never gone back to the country where their parents are from. And there is a disconnection. Like it's hard to really understand. And I think it's important to understand where your parents come from. Like my mom is from a small town in Hungary, and my grandmother lived there when we were children, and we would go back in the summers. And those are like some of my favorite memories, even though my mom didn't always have the best memories from her childhood and wanted to, move away from that small town as early as possible. Like I have memories, connecting with that, and like again, just with grandparents, hearing the stories around all different things. Like it's important to me.
Yeah, very important. It's very important to see where your origins are from, and then it helps you out with your present and your future. Like the way I eat and things. Like I'm like, oh, I can eat this way because like literally the people from where I'm from, they eat this way. So I have some reference, or going out for a walk. Okay, a lot
Yeah.
of people walk where I'm originated from. So, do that, or the way people talk, or connections, or you see family. So many different layers to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, traveling back was being a third culture kid or someone from different cultures, going back to that, where that culture started from is very important and impactful
Yeah.
to just see how far things have came and how things are the same
Mm-hmm.
and how things can be improved.
Yeah. I'm glad you did that. That's important.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, you got anything coming up? I know, you're a busy woman. You got a lot of things going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm most excited about the improv workshops that I'm starting to test out and roll out to teach to different communities, but companies, offices, just bringing people together, active listening, empathy. It's like improv. Improv has everything. Again, simple games. I'm not gonna do scene work. It's more focused on the games and kind of improv zero. Obviously, for people who haven't really done any or have been exposed to it. I do meditation sessions for companies too, and have a few new clients there, and recording meditation sessions for founders specifically.
Wow,
for
really?
independent
Okay.
people. So yeah. How about you? What's coming up?
What's coming up? What's not coming up? So yeah, doing shows out here in Berlin. So hosting, producing shows. That's always changing. So anyone who's in Berlin, you can check out my link on my bio. You can find that out.
You should go. I can attest. It was amazing on stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So got that going on also to the podcast. So, working on that, and also going to New York end of the summer, like around September or so. So I'll be heading out there. And yeah, just really experiencing Berlin. And
summer in Berlin is the best. And it's Nya's first summer in Berlin.
It's my first summer.
Maybe a special one.
There you go. And I might go to one of these places, that Kit Kat, Berghain, or Sissy Fuzz is involved with. So
he's definitely coming.
Damn. See, I should
We'll see where he gets in.
Yeah, okay, that part.
That's a different experience too. That does not exist in New York.
Right.
That like you stand in line for hours and then someone looks at you. It's they get the vibe though, I have to say. Like from the recruiting perspective, I'm fascinated with like this whole process. And I feel like recruiters are like bouncers too. It's like the same job. So I love standing in line. I talk to people, I meet a lot of people. I don't get attached to the outcome.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just cool. Like you can't buy your way in. You can't just buy a ticket. Like, they really like curate the vibe, and I do think it's like an energy level that you can feel inside. So, and it makes you feel special. Who doesn't like to feel special?
It makes you feel special to be selected, and not everyone else being like, "Hey, see you guys later."
And the people like walk back. There's definitely like the walk of shame.
Oh, there's a wall. You gotta walk back where everyone can see you. I don't know if I'm ready. Damn.
You'll get in. You'll get in.
All right. So okay. All right.
Take you where you got in. Yeah.
Thank you. So as a recruiter, that you've done your job well. What can someone do to prepare for going to one of these places, to Kit Kat, to Berghain?
Just, understand, like, yes, in Kit Kat, it's a bit more like sexy dressing, I guess. And then Berghain is, I don't know, like I've went there in like green things. I don't think it's a black only. I do think it's a, just be yourself. They don't let you in if you're like visibly, drunk or high or like on drugs and stuff. So they do like a clean, normal vibe. And yeah, you're like the most positive. Like you talk to people in the broad shop. Come on. They want like friendly, nice people and not like assholes. So yeah, but I don't know. I've never worked as a bouncer, so I'm just trying to observe. But I think like everything, you have to kind of understand what their vibe is like and then come with your vibe. And if they are the one, it's like, recruiters, like people who are hiring, who are letting you in, are in the decision-making seat. So I think it's just, you have to show up and give it a chance to get in. But then if you don't get in, then, don't put your self-worth on it and don't make it mean too much. It's like, oh, like, it's not my place tonight. And then you go somewhere.
Yeah, after what, 3 to 4 hours in line?
You talk to a lot of people there and it's a fun time.
Okay. So
it's usually around 1. I've never, 4 is a stretch. I think 1 to 2 on a longer.
This is a little bit better. Okay.
But when we go early, it's good.
It's good.
Yeah, especially Sisyphus. You got like 8-9 p.m. on a Friday, and then you're just chilling.
I'm not gonna lie, you're selling me on this. You're okay. I'm glad we're having this conversation because every time,
me too.
every time I talk to somebody, they tell me some crazy shit. That's.
It's like life, right? Like everything is what you make of it, and people have different experiences because they are looking for different things and they're different people. But I find it just like a fun, and especially in Berlin, very Berlin experience, except for the indoor smoking, which I wish they banned.
Yeah, they do have indoor smoking in there. Yeah, that's the.
But in Berghain, there are specific like bars where they don't allow that actually, and they have, it's like very huge for tall people, especially. Like it's like a church, almost like a church feeling in a way. Like it's a very like tall building, and so the ventilation and the air is one of the better ones.
Okay. So
yeah, and Sisyphus has a ton of outdoor space. So
I think you're selling me on this place.
I think you're sold.
Oh shit! Okay, you might catch me at one of these places. Kit Kat, I don't know because I've heard some things.
Sisyphus.
Okay, yeah, ease into it, and then before you look, I'll be walking around with a harness or.
And the internet can blame me for it.
You'll see me do social media videos with a choker on. You're like, wow, okay.
So funny. Well, I could talk to you all day long, but I have to pee and go to the bathroom.
Yeah, no, definitely don't want to keep you here. I was wrapping up. I was ahead of you. Sorry, we ended on that note.
That's the reality of my life.
No, that's real.
But I meet a lot of people in bathroom lines too, so I just
All right.
You know, you make the best of it.
Well, that's a good note to end on.
Meet people in lines wherever you are.
All right. Well, thank you very much for doing this, Fanny. Fanny.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys, if you guys are listening or watching, thank you very much for listening and watching. I'm your host, Nyan Yenifin, Third Culture Talk Podcast. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.